strands, we have a battery of microRNAs which keep coming and disappearing to intricately regulate gene expression. The classical example here can be the formation of a leaf. We all know that there is a SAM, or a shoot apical meristance, from which the leaf primordia are initiated, and then they grow and they form the young leaf, which then goes to form a mature leaf, and then senescence sets in. Now, each of these stages is intricately regulated by a series of microRNAs. Like in the initial stages, you have 3 of them, which act on specific transcripts. And if you notice that most of these transcripts happen to be transcription factors. We all know that transcription factors are master molecules. They are themselves regulating the expression of hundreds of genes. So it is one microRNA regulating a particular transcription factors, and hence regulating the expression of hundreds of downstream genes. And the sequential appearance of these microRNAs will determine exactly when the leaf primordia will be defined, how it will grow, how the organ polarity will set in, so that you have an abaxial and an adaxial side getting determined, the young leaf getting formed, how and when it will mature, and when the senescence would set in. Now, among the different microRNAs here, I will take the example of one particular miRNA, which is MIR156. And if you focus at the middle panel here, so this is how a normal Arabidopsis leaf would form. There is a young leaf which gradually matures, and then after a set time, the senescence will set in. And it has been observed, this is not time to time scale, but generally what happens is there is a microRNA 156. The level of this microRNA starts gradually decreasing. As the level starts decreasing, the level of its target transcript, which is SPL, starts increasing, and the SPL protein starts getting formed. So with the maturing of the leaf, the MIR level gradually comes down and the SPL level gradually goes up. Now, what happens if this microRNA is continuously overexpressed in the leaf? So you look at this panel now. When the microRNA is continuously overexpressed, there is a constant inhibition of the SPL transcription factors, and the leaves are found to remain in the young or the early stages. They do not mature. Whereas if you knock out 156, what would happen? Then the SPL protein will slowly start accumulating, and you can see that the lifespan of the leaf is drastically reduced. The leaf matures very fast, and also senescence will set in. So this this is broadly to explain how the microRNA gradients will regulate the protein gradients in the cell to regulate the developmental timing in case of a plant. And and just to explain you, or to answer curious minds, once the SPL level increases, SPL happens to be an inhibitor of another microRNA, a promoter of another microRNA called 172. Now this, so the accumulation of SPL will start promoting the accumulation of MIR 172. MIR 172 will bring down the levels of AP2, and this AP2 is a suppressor of flowering. So as the AP2 level comes down, the signal for flower development will start, and a shoot apical meristem will slowly change into the flowering meristem. So these studies, there is a lot of knowledge, there is a lot of information available. It is very difficult to explain all of this in one slide, but the very idea about putting these 2 slides is to explain or to give an idea of how these microRNAs act. They act on target transcripts. In many cases, these happens to be transcription factors, and there is a gradient kind of effect which is seen in the plant, and this gradient will control the timings and the durations of the various phases in plants, insects, as well as other organisms. Now, Like I said, that microRNAs are also acting on the hormonal pathways. So like here I'm trying to show a cartoon which shows an auxin signaling pathway. Auxin acts on its receptor TIR1, then downstream signaling pathways are activated, which activate number of downstream transcription factors, those mentioned in these yellow circles. And then these transcription factors will regulate downstream genes to control different aspects of plants like root formation, shoot morphology, flowering time, flower morphology, so on and so forth. Now, over and above this, you can see, look at the dotted lines and these and the square boxes. These shows the various microRNAs which act on these transcription factors, forming a layer, an integrated layer of regulators. And therefore, these two regulators will dynamically interact with each other. And this will help the plants to continuously regulate or monitor their development in response to environmental cues. So not only these microRNAs regulate the hormonal responses, their expression themselves are regulated by the auxins. So you can imagine the kind of complexity which occurs. So there are layers of we can talk about integrated layers of regulations which occur, and even the formation, a simple thing as a formation of leaf is not as genetically that simple. It is highly intricately regulated by a combination of transcripts and microRNAs to regulate the morphology, the shape, the time, and the various aspects of leaf formation. So before we move forward, it will not be wrong to say that when we talk about transcription factors, or when we talk about the small RNAs associated with RNA interference, they are both master regulators. So there are two master regulators which talk to each other. And why do I categorize them as master regulators? Because both are naturally occurring processes in plants. Both of them can impact more than one genes, and they regulate endogenous genes pathway. So if we can understand how these two talk to each other, interact with each other during the growth and cycle of a plant, because plants are sessile, they have to respond, they have to interact with the environment, they cannot run away from them. So an understanding of these two factors will throw light on understanding how the plant growth and development is modulated or regulated in response to the changing environment. So with this in mind, we have two aspects. Now, in one aspect, I'm telling you that microRNAs regulate development. And there is another aspect where I'm telling you that stress regulates the plant development. And both of them have an impact on yield. So there is a kind of a developmental plasticity which occurs, and this is because of interaction of the two master regulators with each others. So with this knowledge that alteration or abundance of microRNAs can lead to developmental abnormalities or disease state, we asked several simple questions before beginning our research into RNAi. The search was for the potential master regulators and to understand and how they function so that they can modulate the plant physiology and help them to adapt to stresses. And also whether, and during this process, we also took help from the viruses, because some of the plant viruses bring with them suppressors or inhibitors of these microRNAs and or the RNA silencing machinery, if I make it more generic, and they can be used as excellent probes to understand the function of the microRNAs in response to both biotic as well as abiotic responses to the plants. And of course, the ultimate question is, once we understand these microRNAs, can there be any such tools which can help to enhance the plant productivity, specifically in the present day where there are a lot of limitations and a lot of challenges before agriculture. So just to give you an overview of what my lab has been working on, we took rice as the major crop, although we are looking at other crops also like tomatoes, sorghum, so on and so forth. and looked at the different tissues, the panicles, the leaf and the root tissues at different developmental stages, took a range of rice varieties. Now, if you all know that rice can be categorized based on grain size into short grain, medium grain, and long grain varieties. These long grain sweet selling, the sweet smelling varieties are the basmatis probably, and the short grain varieties are a lot of short grain sticky rice varieties are also available. So we took a battery of these varieties based on the grain size, and then they categorize them in on the basis of their sensitivity or tolerance to various stresses. Some are tolerant to salt, there are some which are tolerant or moderately resistant to heat, so on and so forth. And within this panel, we also included some of the transgenics that have been developed by various groups and as tolerant to particular stresses, and tried to understand the response of salt stress, drought stress, high temperature stress on the plants. And also in this panel, we decided to include the virus infection. Now, these may look at different stresses, but they aren't they regulated. Whenever temperatures are high, it results in increased evaporation, resulting in increasing in salinity on the soil. And if in case of rain-fed areas, they may even result in drought, which is a stress to the plant. And also high temperatures specifically increase or attract the insects to the plants. And most of these insects carry with them a battery of viruses. So we decided to keep a lot of these parameters, studying them individually first and then in combination, trying to understand how the plant responses are getting just trying to understand how they are getting controlled in response to these single, double, or triple or multiple stresses, to gain an understanding of the intricate regulation of the genetic machinery. And to this the NGS or the Illumina sequencing came as a very efficient tool here, because we did a lot of small RNA analysis to mine and map the microRNAs, did a lot of transcript analysis to look at how the transcriptome is behaving, and also did a specific kind of sequencing called a degradome sequencing, which will help us identify the cleaved targets of these microRNAs. And then by integrating and analyzing this data, we moved forward. So what these profiles, a lot of libraries were sequenced, and what they threw at us were complicated graphs, or we can call profiles of these microRNAs and the transcripts, and these could be plotted in tissue wise or stress physiology wise or variety wise. And if you look at these graphs, generically the overview, it doesn't throw us a unique pattern or a specific pattern here. They contain a lot of bars which are up and down regulated. So that means each data has to be looked into carefully and analyzed carefully. There is nothing stand out or a striking gene or a striking molecule which stands out and which says that yes, I am responsible for tissue development or stress response, so on and so forth. And also in this, just to mention that in the passing, that since a lot of small RNA libraries were sequenced, we could identify a lot of so-called novel molecules. Many of these have been validated, and there are still many which are being validated. And this is a huge data in respect to the Indian rice varieties which have been generated. A lot of it has been published, and because it's a live seminar, I will try to restrict my talk to the published data. And so what we could do by a series of as a basic biology series of validation was we could identify microRNA specific family members which were coming up as leaf preferential, root preferential, or flower preferential, and identified the corresponding targets which came up only in so like 397, the root target was not there, but in the leaf and the flower, the target transcription was there, indicating how the targets are getting regulated. And based on these studies and using the help of computational softwares, a lot of intricate target microRNAs nodes were identified, and how these nodes were specific for their action in the leaf, in the roots, in the flowers, so on and so forth. Now, a lot of the NGS threw us a lot of data, so it had to be validated, because there could be a lot of in silico noise there. And so the first step was to get into global validations. Specific micro RNA arrays were made. Again, we have a lot of green, red mixed patterns, nothing clearly coming out, but we could identify expression zones in response to particular physiologies or in specific tissues. So for today's talk, I will focus specifically on one response so that it makes some sense to the listeners, and we'll focus on salt stress here. Now, when we talk about salt stress, we chose Pusa Basmati, the long grained, as the most salt susceptible variety. Then we have another variety called Pokali, which is very endemic to the southern region in India, and this is salt tolerant, and it can even be grown in seawater. So where we had two contrasting varieties here, this was a long grain susceptible variety, and this happened to be a short grain but a tolerant variety. Still, both are rice. The genome synteny is there. We expect a lot of sequence conservation. And as a control, what we took was we were fortunate to have this glycolase overexpressing rice, which was developed by Professor Sapori's group. And by overexpressing a biochemical pathway which involves two enzymes, GLY1 and GLY2, and these rice plants are transgenic rice plants are salt tolerant. Now, since this was overexpressed in the Pusa Basmati background, it gave us an excellent control. So we could now compare the susceptible, the tolerant, and the transgenic tolerant varieties. And in this panel, we also included another tolerant transgenic. This is a flockhouse virus B2 plant. Now, a flockhouse a virus is an insect infecting virus, and one of the protein coded by this virus B2 has been shown to impart tolerance to plants. This is now a different line of study. Papers have been published on that, but still we included this also as a transgenic, also as a control in our data set, just to understand how the microRNAs are behaving. So we took the panel of this so-called salt deregulated microRNAs, and first started validating them by doing RT-PCRs and in different tissues and different varieties. And once we had this panel, we compared the Pokali and the Pusa Basmati. So this is one panel showing a comparison of the leaf tissues of those which are non-stressed and the stressed, and how the molecules are those molecules which are downregulated in Pusa Basmati, upregulated in Pokali, vice versa, so on and so forth. And we started looking at the graphs. Again, you see that there is a lot of haphazard pattern. But if we put a fold level, if we make a cutoff using say two-fold fold level, then we have specific molecules which are getting highly upregulated or downregulated in response in the tolerant varieties here, or in the susceptible variety. So if you look at these panels, this is for Pusa Basmati. This shows that the fluctuation here is much more, both the upregulations and the downregulations, and this is what is seen in Pokali here. The fluctuations levels are comparatively much less, and we have very few molecules which are showing very high regulation. So there appears to be a tighter regulation of transcripts in the tolerant variety as compared to the susceptible varieties. Just an overview without getting into the details. So this was the kind of breakup that we have, that if we look at Pusa Basmati under salt stress and normal conditions, you have very few molecules which are getting downregulated. sorry, you have a lot of molecules which are getting down regulated. The 0% stands here. A lot of molecules which are getting down regulated, and there are very few molecules which are up regulated. On the other hand, if you look at a similar comparison in Pokali, you have very few down regulations as compared to the up regulations. Now, don't bother too much about these colors, because this color is to show the fold changes from 0 to 2 to 4, so on and so forth. But if you compare just the size of the graphs, then it is that there are larger number of down regulations in the susceptible varieties as compared to the tolerant varieties. So does this indicate anything, or is it because that they two of them belong to two different genetic rice backgrounds? To compare this, we looked at the glyxylase transgenics. So this is comparing the glyxylase normal plants with the normal Pusa basmati plants, or the glyxylase salt stress plants with the salt stress Pusa basmati plants. The red dots are for glyxylase and the black ones are for the Pusa basmati. Sorry, red dots are for the normal ones, and the black dots are for the salt stressed ones. And if you see that there is again a haphazard pattern. So we took this data and we started looking at it in another fashion, where we compared the glyxylase salt stress with respect to its own normal non-stress controls, and Pusa basmati similarly. And here the red is Pusa basmati and the black ones are glyxylase. Now, if you see, there is a lot of scattering of dots if you look at the red dots, whereas the gray dots are more or less more compact, and they are more or less together. But the scattering pattern is more in compared to the gray dots. And this is what was reflected in the graph here. So you have again in the transgenics, you have a higher number of upregulations as compared to the down regulations, and but the fluctuations that you see is much less. And this is very much expected, because now this is a transgenic where only one pathway has been overexpressed, although it is a salt tolerant variety. But we are comparing it here to a natural background Pokali, which can grow, which has naturally adapted itself to grow under saline conditions. But the microRNA profiles indicate that yes, there is if there is a change in the microRNA regulation, it is probably reflected in the transcripts, and these transcripts ultimately control the physiology of the plant. So, and just to answer your curiosity again on the B2 plants, again we have here this is another pathway. This is a viral protein which is moving the plant towards tolerance. So again we see a shift in the microRNA pattern here. So this gave us a lot of excitement, that and also a validation that indeed the microRNA expression patterns are regulated in response to stress, and this will have a direct impact on the physiology or the growth pattern of the plant. So when we talk about microRNAs, we again we took those, we looked at them in one way, two-way, multiple way manner to see which family member or which particular molecule is coming up in which physiology. All those kinds of studies were done. A lot of this work has been published also, so I'm not getting into details here. But what I want to stress is that microRNAs cannot be studied alone. You have to look at them with respect to the targets. And so we looked at the changing profiles of these microRNAs and tried to look at the targets. Now we had a wide range of targets which came up. There were transcription factors, there were enzymes, there were receptors, but we tried to focus for specificity's sake only on the transcription factors, how one master molecule regulates another master molecule. And this is to show that some of the microRNAs in these plants are regulating a wide range of transcription factors here, and most of these have there are reports of their association with one or the other abiotic stress response. So again, a lot of validations were done, and now we could focus on specific molecules, microRNAs, and their target transcripts, which the profiles, some of the profiles are shown here. And now this panel will not include only the transcription factors, but also some of the enzymes like helicases, or some of the receptors. There were kinases and other enzymes. And this now turned out to be the core set of microRNAs, which were getting deregulated, or which were getting intricately regulated in the tolerant plants vis-a-vis the susceptible ones. And three kinds of pathways came up. One was of course the transcription factors, which act in regulating the genetic machinery. The other major pathway was the calcium signaling pathway, because calcium is an important signaling molecule here. And so and the third pathway interestingly happened to be the ROS pathway. And if we start looking at literature, we can actually stitch the three together, with the calcium signals influencing the ROS, as well as the transcription factors, to regulate the genetic machinery in the cell. So so overall we have some clue, but before making any claims, still a lot of scientific validations and proofs have to be done to understand what exactly is happening here. And this is and at the metabolite level, trying to understand what is happening. Then you can see the pathway in the red. So you have the glycolase pathway, sorry, you also have the glycolase pathway lighting up. Most of the protein synthesis and the respiratory machinery getting affected. So now if you can layer it, you can actually get a picture of how the signals are converging, whether they are calcium signals or ROS signals. They are converging on the transcription factors to regulate a variety of downstream pathways, majorly in the respiratory and the chain. And this would have an impact on the physiology of the plant. These are still maps. Most of this data still needs to be validated, but we have used a lot of computational algorithms to reach at this stage, because we need starting points to start our validations, and these are good leads to work further and to validate the work further. So based on this, we have constructed a kind of a